everyone. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. We're here with Mikey. Mikey's been here once before, but for those who don't know you, Mikey, will you give yourself a little introduction?
Yeah, of course. I'm Mikey Castro, if you guys want to add me on LinkedIn. But I am a corporate recruiter. So I work for a company called Route Networking Group. We do full-time permanent placement positions here in Idaho. So we work with clients throughout the Treasure Valley. However, some of our clients are in the Pacific Northwest and full-time. Yeah. So it spans the gamut of different industries, but our niche is more so tech. So I work on product manager roles, SDETs, engineers, you name it, DevOps. So we're all there. But that's a little bit about me. Retired dance teacher. I'm a golfer. I play video games, and I've been grinding Modern Warfare 2 like hard.
Nice. It's a
Uh,
shooter game.
yeah,
All right. I don't
I
play
got to get all my
first-person
guns
shooters.
unlocked
Do
for
it.
Warzone, so you get it.
Um, I don't know if you want to do this, but we did get a drink like 4 minutes ago, so I'm gonna do that really quick.
A drink,
Yeah,
like water.
or whatever. This is Gatorade or Powerade or something. So,
We didn't cheers.
all right. Cheers. Clink. 2 drinks for the price of one. All right. So, if we're okay, words are hard. We'll be asking Mikey questions about recruiting and recruiters in tech. So, if you have any questions, exclamation point ask, click the link there. And those are the questions we will be looking at. So, we already have some so far. So, let's start with what do you look for most that makes a good candidate?
That's so like hard. Obviously, like people that are you have to look at the resume, you have to look at the tech stack that they're is this tech recruiting or like just in general?
Tech. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So with tech recruiting, like for us, we have clients that are either in like a JavaScript stack, Node, React, Angular, Vue. So I'll look at that. Some candidates are on the C sharp side of things and only been Microsoft and like clients to us will say we don't want anyone with C sharp. We want somebody with this, right? So like the hard skills and just understanding how long they've been coding in a specific language. But then when I get onto a call, it's more about the vibe. So, if I can easily have conversations with people, it makes it a lot easier to ask like, what are the projects that you've been working on? Tell me about like conflicts that you've had at work. I just, for me, I look for very like communicative people, people that are actually going to take initiative too. And then just, I think backing up, like whenever I submit a candidate, I feel like I'm submitting like a friend. So like if me and you are like buddy, it's so much easier for me to put in like a good word, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's most recruiters as well? Like they take the same approach?
Good question. I think every recruiter has a different like way they go about it. So, in our company, we're very relationship based. So we care about like the relationship. Whereas like if you're talking to maybe a staffing agency or a contracting agency, they could just see like check. Let's get this person submitted. But for us, it's even if a candidate doesn't work out for a client, we just love keeping the relationship side of things because then I can submit them for other roles, right? It's not just like a one and done situation. I mean, me and you have like known each other for about a year-ish almost.
Is it really? Wow.
I I want to say I reached out to you at the beginning of the year, maybe.
Probably. Yeah, probably. Something like that.
Yeah. So
Right. Um, did you ever witness a salary negotiation go very wrong?
personally, I haven't, because like for our process, we submit what a candidate wants to be in, compensation wise. However, what I've seen is like when we submit a candidate, say the compensation, a client could come with like $5,000 underneath like what their floor is, So then we have to go back to the client and we're like, what are you doing? Like, did we just waste everyone's time? Recently, though, we had a candidate. They were going through a UI UX interview, and we submitted them at a range. She gets to final interview stages. She asked for $50,000 more, and that blindsided the recruiter, and that essentially turned our client off. Where they're like, "Wait, where did you get? Where's that gap coming from?" Right. So I
Right.
think at the end of the day, it's more so about like the transparency aspect, understanding like what your value is, understanding where your floor is. Obviously, at the end of the day, we all want to make more money, but I think going in and just being kind of genuine, more so of like looking for like a higher paycheck, right?
Okay. Um, that's interesting. Do you feel like there's like a do you have like a floor esque number for like a junior dev?
Yeah, I think it depends too, like where they live. I can speak on like when I talk to junior devs here in Boise. So I've talked to some junior devs that are looking to be at 120, and then sometimes I have to like push them back down, and I'm like, look, as a junior dev, it could either go from like 60 to 85, just depending on what company you're working with, like who you're applying for. So I think it depends, but for me, when I'm working with like anybody in general, it's understanding what their floor is, right? I'm not getting their salary, and I don't have the expenses that they need or whatever. But one of those things when we talk about compensation is more so of like, help me understand what's important to you. Is it compensation? Is it culture? Is it remote? Work life balance? Like, what does that look like? Um, Instead of just being like having a junior dev come to me and be like, I need to be at 110, send me jobs at 110. I don't personally, I don't want to work with those kind of people just because like we have to have those open conversations, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. What is your advice to someone from outside the US who wants to find a fully remote job offer in the US or in Canada?
Yeah, that one's hard because I know like the H1B1 sponsorships. So sometimes I'll have to ask candidates if they need a sponsorship. So being very mindful of the type of companies that can offer a sponsorship first before you can get your citizenship, right? Um, I know that there's like those full time positions, but typically it's going to be more of a contracting job because of just so many different like legality reasons that I'm not familiar with. But with like an H1B1 sponsorship, there's bigger companies that can offer that, or they're not bigger companies, but there are companies that can offer an H1B1 until that person can get their citizenship for the United States or Canada.
Okay. What are your thoughts on cold outreach to a hiring manager for a company that's hiring for a position?
That's so I saw that question,
Okay.
and I actually when my friends are actually going for like job interviews or like looking for new like opportunities, I tell them to look for a recruiter in the company. Just because sometimes hiring managers are so busy, they have to hire, but then they also have to do their job. Where if you can reach out to a recruiter and build the rapport, build the relationship, like that recruiter is going to remember you and then be able to get you through. You can start looking at the recruiters that work for companies. You can see if you have any mutual connections at the company, and most companies typically have like a referral program. So whether that person can get you in front of the hiring manager, they can get you a referral, or they can point you in the right direction, right? Like for instance, I had one of my buddies he's a customer success manager, and one of my friends works at that company he wants to work for. So I connected them. Then now she is doing a referral and then connecting him to the recruiter. So it's all about networking at the end of the day, right? If you can reach out to a hiring manager, for sure, do it, but like also hit different avenues or different outlets.
Okay. So, like, how would you suggest that people reach out to like a recruiter then?
Such a great question, and I actually wrote a blog post about this.
Share it.
I'll send it to you. Um, so I actually came up with like a little template. Like when we reach out to engineers, we keep it very personable. So I'll look at a profile and see like, oh, this person likes the game. So I'm going to include that in my messaging, right? Don't necessarily reach out to a recruiter and be like, hey, I need a job, but more so of like, hey, I saw this job posting for a junior developer, a mid developer. I'm interested in applying, and I think I could potentially be a good fit for the company because of the tech stack that I'm working in, the years of experience that I have, projects that I've accomplished. Regardless, it's kind of like it's an elevator pitch, right? But you want to keep it personable. So when reaching out to tech recruiters, obviously, depending on the type of recruiter you're reaching out to, like for me, I'm an industry recruiter, so or yeah, multiple industries. So sometimes I don't have like junior dev jobs to work on, right? But for me, because I care about the relationship, I try to connect them wherever I can. But reaching out to a recruiter at the end of the day, it's like cold calling, but also doing your homework. Because I've had people reach out to me on LinkedIn and they've also been like, "Hey, I love that you're a dancer. What kind of dance do you do?" And I'm like, that's literally in my headline. How like what? You know what I mean? So keeping it personable. Um, I'm reaching out for this, this, and this because of this, this, and this. I might be a junior dev, but this is what I've accomplished. I'll send you the template
Okay.
for people to either play around with or try. It's just kind of the way that I would like to be approached. So think of it as more of like, how would you like someone to approach you?
Okay. And what do you think of like clicking apply?
If you can get in with a recruiter, somebody that works there for a referral, or the hiring manager, I think that's a better way to go. Like start there, and then they might tell you to apply through like LinkedIn or everything. It just depends on what their like ATS system looks like. Because if you're applying, you're going through ATSs, the ATS is looking for like SEO, right? SEO stuff that matches the job description. And if you don't hit like a certain percentage, then you're not getting an interview. Whereas if you're talking to a recruiter, a referral, hiring manager, they can actually have a conversation with you instead of trying to get past the machine.
Okay. Um, so this is kind of along the same line as what we were just talking about. Someone asked about do's or don'ts reaching out to tech recruiters. Would you just say like don't like ask for a job, don't be impersonable, things like
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Don't reach out to a don't reach out to a recruiter in general and just be like, hey, I need a job, right? And I'm looking for this, this, and this. But again, it's like a conversation. How would you want to be approached? How would you want to like just be a decent human in a way?
Right.
Like have a conversation. Um, I think some of the don'ts is, understand that everyone's busy. It's okay to send like a follow-up message and just be like, hey, just wanted to bring this to the top of your inbox. By chance, did you see my message? Wanted to follow up regarding this, this, this. But if it's like every day, maybe not. Just kind of fill out the vibe.
Okay. What percentage of greatness would you split your calls into? As in, how many are amazing, good, okay, and unbelievably awful?
So hard. Uh, I want to say like one out of 10 calls. I get done with the call and I'm just like, dope. Like I don't want to work with this person. Majority of them, like I would say 75%. It's like one of those like we're still getting to know each other. We're still trying to understand what type of job they're looking for, what they're looking to do. So it's just feeling it out. Recruiting is a lot like dating.
Hmm. All right.
So yeah, take that for what it is.
Up, cross apply some techniques.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and then sometimes I've been on calls where it's like those are kind of the harder conversations because I'm the one that reached out to them, and then I understand like they're not a fit for this job, right? And then sometimes I have to backpedal or just be like, hey, you know what? Like I care about this relationship more than just like getting you submitted into for a client. this might not be the right opportunity, right? But we can still like, I can give them feedback and give them everything to prepare for the next interview. That way they're able to smash it when the time comes.
Okay. What is one of the most memorable conversations you've had in recruiting?
That's hard. That's so hard. Um, I think like my very first placement, it wasn't a tech placement, but it was just like more so they were a college graduate looking for like that next step of life. And understanding when I graduated college, I had no idea what I was going to do. So I think every time that I get a placement, or every time that I find a great fit for a candidate, it just like really makes me warm on the inside.
Get the warm fuzzies.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Do sponsorships tend to affect compensation?
I can't answer that just because I've never done any sponsorship like negotiation or salary and stuff. I think, depending on the company, they may have that budgeted in. So, the sponsorship, the contract, whatever that may look like. But I could see it essentially affecting compensation, just depending.
Okay. Character wise, how should people present themselves when speaking with recruiters and even in interviews?
Great question. I think there's balancing the fine line of being professional, but also being able to like show your character, right? Like showing up to interviews in just like a normal t-shirt, or just like you look like you rolled out of bed. Probably not if it's a Zoom interview. But like when you have a conversation, or just being able to let your personality shine through, because at the end of the day, they're going to look for those hard skills, but they also want somebody to be a great culture fit. So if you're able to show some of those characteristics, but if like you're in an interview, like a Zoom interview, and you're on your phone, or you're not making eye contact, which is a lot harder over video, like those are things that I would pick up on. I'm sure hiring managers are going to pick up on, and then recruiters are also going to pick up on.
How, when you're applying to a company, how do you like suss out the vibe? Like, they want this sort of culture fit. How do you figure that out beforehand?
Kind of doing your research on the company. Like if you can tell like it's a very fun environment, or like a young work culture, then it's probably going to be people like our age, or like that's kind of the vibe. But if you're applying for more so of like corporate in a way, you may want to like spruce it up a little, or just kind of like tighten up, like where you're not as loose having a conversation.
Okay.
Also too, like I was talking to one of my buddies, and we were talking about like I was prepping him for engineering opportunity, and we also talked about like the star method. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So like always having like three really good stories, right? One about like your technical background, one about essentially like problem solving, and then teamwork.
Hmm. I've heard like also we're like told about like CAR, which is similar. So cause, action, result. And then that's for specifically like behavioral. And then for technical questions, it's like explanation, use, and example. So,
Those are like those acronyms are always just so good, right? Because I think going into interviews, sometimes people would just start rambling, and then all of a sudden you're like, did I even answer your question? But if you can even like rehearse, one thing that I've practiced doing is record yourself answering, or presenting those interview questions. That way you can check your body language, the way that you present it, and then you just really want to tighten it up.
okay. I've had recruiters latch onto my project management experience and put me through to speak to companies for roles that are above my experience level, usually senior, team lead type roles that are mostly product management. Should I just not mention this in initial chats and specifically state I want a junior mid developer role?
I think being transparent with your recruiter of like, hey, is this a senior role? Like, am I going to have direct reports? I'm not familiar with that. But it is like, it's not black or white, right? Like it's gray for sure. Because if you want direct reports or if you think that you have that leadership capability, then by all means, like have that conversation with the recruiter, but understand like what those responsibilities and those duties are actually going to be. Because sometimes what I've seen is like companies will say it's a senior level project manager or a product manager, but in reality, sometimes it could be a mid or a junior. So it's just having that conversation and understanding like what does those responsibilities look
What if it's not with a recruiter
like a hiring manager.
or yeah, or someone at the company or whoever's in charge of, I guess, the interviewing process?
Still the same question, like asking what does success look like in 60 days, 30 days, 90 days? Will I have direct reports? Is this a senior level position or is it more of a junior to mid that's going to grow into a senior?
Okay. What can we do to stand out when applying for remote roles?
What to do to stand out for remote roles? I always lean on like the whole aspect of finding the recruiter, the hiring manager on LinkedIn or, whatever else. Um, I think depending on what you're applying for, what company you're applying for, it kind of depends because again, it goes back to that ATS, right? If you're not hitting a certain percentage what the ATS is looking for, then you might not necessarily get an interview or a pre-screen call. So it's just all about using like your network.
Okay. As a beginner, should we try for startups or more established enterprises?
Depending on what you want to do. Like for a startup company, sometimes you're going to be drinking from a fire hose. And that's the environment that you thrive in. By all means, go for it. But if you're wanting to get like the training, a mentor, then potentially maybe a bigger company where the framework or like the foundation is actually laid down, and that way you have a great onboarding experience.
Interesting. Um, what is your advice for people who are nervous to reach out and talk to recruiters?
What advice do I have for people that are? It's hard. It's like for me, like sometimes I get nervous reaching out to senior level engineers, but at the end of the day, it's like I continue to tell myself I'm not going to know the answer unless I reach out, right? Like for us, like you can always assume of like I'm not good enough or I don't have the qualifications, but until you actually have that conversation, you don't actually know that. So it is scary, definitely scary to reach out to somebody you don't know. But if there's a way like on their profile to make even like a connection of, hey, I saw that you went to this school, or I saw that you were in a fraternity or sorority. I saw you play this video game. I saw you snowboard. There's just so many different things that you can try to connect with a recruiter, a hiring manager, somebody that works at the company in general. And I think too, like that's what when I was like lurking your stream the very first time, like you would go through people's profiles and be like, I'm gonna hit this, this, and this, right? When you reach out to somebody like that, I feel like goes a lot further than just saying, "Hey, saw there was a job opening at your company. I would love to chat about it."
Right. Yeah, I mean, I hear like there's like every opportunity is like a no if you don't even apply. So like you're not applying, you're not reaching out to someone because you're afraid it's going to be a no. Well, if you don't reach out or apply or whatever, it's already a no. So, like,
Exactly, and too, like there could be the job might not even be posted. Like they might be posting for senior level positions and not necessarily posting for a junior. So if you're reaching out to somebody, they might have that in of like, hey, you're not a good fit for the senior position, but we do have an opening for a junior.
um,
Or I might know somebody at a different company. So it's just all about connections and networking.
networking
Always.
always. Any tips or questions for what to ask recruiters when setting up a chat?
Um, like would you be open to discussing this role or in that type of way?
Maybe. I guess yeah, like I guess they're probably talking about the message like, hey, like recruiter person, like what's the opening message? We talked about making it personal. Anything else?
Yeah, like you need a call to action. So would it be okay for a 15, 20-minute Zoom call or, a chat just to learn more about the position and see if I could potentially be a fit? So like that's one way to talk about it, or one way to, I guess, use that call to action. Um, I've had people be like, send me a Calendly link too. It makes it easy for me, right? Where I'm like, okay, yeah, because they took the initiative and they have a Calendly, like it makes it so much easier. Where I'm like, oh, I have 15 minutes here.
Right. I have a Calendly and it's been pretty good. Like whenever recruiters reach out to me, I'm like, yeah, here's my Calendly. And a lot of times they actually do like set something up.
Yeah, for sure. It's so much easier because then you don't have to. You basically cut out steps, right? Instead of asking people for their availability and then trying to figure out what works, just being able to visualize it and be like, I have the spot there.
Right. How should you introduce yourself to recruiters if you're not ready for a job at the moment? I just started the boot camp, so I'm not ready for a job yet. Should I even be reaching out to recruiters while I'm learning, or should I wait until I gain a certain level of coding ability?
Great question. I think networking, no matter what, right? Like even if you're starting or if you're looking for a job, it's like you never know what that timing is going to look like. So even if you're going through like the coding boot camp, there could potentially be like a manual testing opening that a recruiter has. So you could potentially go through the camp, start interviewing for a manual testing position, finish the camp, and then start working your way up. So I don't think there's necessarily like a you have to finish boot camp, and then you can reach out to recruiters, right? Because in our industry, it's more of like timing is everything.
Right. What should you wear for a Zoom call interview for a software engineering role?
Typically, I'll just wear like a button up, like a collared t-shirt, whether it's like a Henley, a polo. I don't know how to dress like as a female. I would assume the exact same thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
But just
whenever,
even like a shirt.
yeah, just like, I think it works pretty well if you just think about it in like a real interview. Like, what shirts do they wear then? You know?
Yeah. Like don't wear like a cutoff or gym clothes or something, like a hoodie and then have your hood on.
A denim
Like,
jacket, cut
yeah,
off sleeves, a backwards hat.
that's what I do.
um, any tips or red flags to look for to avoid toxic or unhealthy work environments?
A lot of people will check Glassdoor for companies and just, I think when you check Glassdoor, sometimes you have to take it with a grain of salt though too. Like some people obviously had a really bad experience and their feelings are valid, but being able to kind of like go into an interview and be like, hey, I noticed on Glassdoor, or I noticed that there were these reviews talking about the company. When candidates bring that to us and we're able to talk to our clients about that, our clients are very transparent about it. They're like, yeah, we were going through like a startup phase, or we were going through a growth phase, or there was an acquisition and things were a little murky in a way. That way you can get two sides of the story.
Right. Also, that person said, thank you both for doing this Q&A.
Of course, I love this kind of stuff.
Me too. I'm a fresh graduate CS student, but with no experience. How can I deal with the experience part of my resume, LinkedIn, and interview?
Talk about your projects that you worked on while you're going to school or even a coding boot camp. Like typically when we do mock interviews for people that just graduated like a boot camp, I really dive in on the projects that they worked on. What steps did they take? What part were they more front end? Were they more back end? What were those languages? And then we really dial it in on that aspect. And then, what you could do is take your previous work experience that isn't tech related, that can show off like some of your soft skills. So like conflict management or leadership or whatever that may be.
Okay. I'm unsure how or where to research company culture, especially for smaller to mid-sized companies.
I'm looking at
So,
the questions too.
So that one is not in the. So
Okay,
everyone, we will see your questions faster if you use the form, but these are ones that I've been seeing in chat. Um,
gotcha.
that have gone by already. So this person basically is asking like, how do I find out, like where do I research company culture if it's like a smaller company? Is I think what it's saying.
Yeah, I think a good tip for that would be like on LinkedIn, you can see the people that work there, right? So you can see like what the it's kind of stalking in a way, or doing your research,
Professional.
however you want to phrase it or coin it. But I think just understanding like the type of people that work there too. Like if they're posting like really fun stuff, then I'm assuming like it would be a really cool opportunity or a good work culture. If it's just like straight to the point, blah 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 blah, then they may be very more like buttoned up in a way.
Okay.
I think there's definitely like it makes it hard for sure, like when there's no information about like a smaller company or like a mid-sized startup. But I think there's always things out there that can, as long as you do your research, you can find something.
I also think that like if it's like a smaller company, like you could reach out to like one of the people who works there and be like, "Hey," and then they probably have a really good like idea of what the culture's like since they work there and they're like, I don't know, like 50 people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the best ways to do it too, is reaching out to people that already work at the company and be like, hey, I noticed that there was a job opening at your company. Would love to just chat about like what that culture is or why you like to work there. Right.
Right. How do I
And
go?
just do it. Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
No, go on.
I would say
Finish.
do it with multiple people. Like make sure that sample size is good.
Mm,
Don't just reach out to one person because one person's opinion may be completely different from another person's opinion. So one person could absolutely hate it, and then you're like, oh wait, I, I don't want I don't want to work there. The other person could absolutely love it and then give you the reasons why, and then you're like, okay, that makes sense.
so for like the jobs you're applying to, should that be kind of a rule of thumb? Like you should be messaging multiple people in the company every time?
I'd say like there's no standard for it. If you really want the job, then you got to shoot your shot because you could reach out or you could send one connection request, but that one person might not even be on LinkedIn religiously. So if you're reaching out to two or three and then maybe you get a message back, then for sure like explore those options because there's also going to be different departments, right? So you're going to have the tech team, you're going to have the product team, you're going to have like the customer success team. Like just hearing about the company from different aspects.
Okay. I'm trying to think about if we answered this one or not. Someone asked, how do I go about responding to a recruiter if I'm not looking for a new job but would like to establish a relationship for the future? Did we cover that?
We did not, but that's also like we love that. Like, hey, Mikey, not necessarily looking for a job, need to finish up a project before I start looking. Would love to stay in contact. And I think for us, that's on the recruiter's job to do a follow up. Like understanding, like, okay, would it be okay if I reach out to you in 6 months? What does that timeline look like? Just really trying to stay. For me, I try to stay on top of a candidate's mind, right? Because when they are looking for a job, they're like, oh, I really had a great experience with Mikey, even though he didn't place me anywhere, but we had a great conversation. Like he understands how to talk to people, and he might understand like what my next move may look like. So definitely, it's all about networking and it's all about building the relationships.
Can you give a good example of something someone has said to negotiate salary?
Yeah, I think understanding like what the range is and what you want. So it's very hard, just because like as a recruiter, I'm able to talk to the candidate, like, okay, what's your absolute floor? Like if I'm going to go to bat for you, I need to know like what your number is, right? And then I can go to the client. So I'm the middleman. That way, there's like no animosity towards each other in the negotiation. But sometimes like the candidate is like, yeah, I feel more comfortable just talking to the hiring manager about what that negotiation looks like.
Okay. If someone reaches out to you to chat, how much do you expect it to be personal versus business? Do you have advice for things to bring up or avoid?
I use like a 30-70 rule. So like 30% is more of like the personable, like connecting. And then like obviously we're on LinkedIn, so it's business, right? So for me, like a transition is I'll start a paragraph and I'll say something personable. And then the next paragraph is going to say, on another note, curious if you're looking for a new opportunity right now. Right. So you could flip that as a candidate, start with something personable, grab their attention, say, on another note, I noticed that there was this job posting. Would you mind, or would you be available for a 15 to 20-minute conversation where I can learn more about the role of the company, the culture, and how I may be an asset to the company? Something like that.
Right. Um, Tips for career pivoting, especially for someone with a law enforcement background looking to make a change. My resume is a weird one.
Yeah. I think for like law enforcement stuff, I feel like that's very like there's so much like leadership there, like that you can speak on, right? Because I'll talk to like veterans, that have been in the Air Force or in the military in general. Like there's different things and kind of getting creative of being able to show like what those soft skills look like from the military to the civilian side of things, right? Like there's so many military personnel that I've talked to that are very like project management focused, but the way that they talk about it in the military doesn't necessarily translate to a civilian, if that makes sense.
Like different lingo.
Yeah, different lingo, just being able to really articulate to a different audience.
Okay. Um, if a recruiter contacts us and we're not looking for a job right now, can we recommend someone else for it?
Absolutely. Um, Also, though, I would say deal with like be careful too, because like that's your referral now, right? So if your referral is like not a good person or like they're not somebody that's gonna like essentially show up to a meeting or not do something, like if you genuinely think that this person is a great person to bring forward, absolutely refer them. Like we have candidates do that all the time. But I've also had like candidates be like, yeah, my friend is also looking for a job and not give me any information.
Okay. I always hear that in an interview it's okay to say no to a question. What are your suggestions as an interviewer on exactly how to say that, especially in a tech related question?
Can you rephrase that? Or can you say that again? Sorry.
Um, I always hear that in an interview it's okay to say no to a question. What are your suggestions as an interviewer on how exactly to say it, especially in a tech related question?
Is that more so like not being able to answer like the question in general?
I th-
Or
I think like what it sounds like to me is like, do you have experience with this maybe? And then you say no.
yeah,
I'm not
so
sure.
like way that I would answer is like that's a really great question. Unfortunately, I don't have experience. Let's say like C# note, right? It's like if somebody were interviewing you about C#, it's like I haven't necessarily worked on any of the projects in C#. However, I do understand, some of the things that I've learned with Node or Java can easily translate to this type of language. Being able to tie it back, not just being like, no, never done that, don't know how to answer it, but being able to try to like figure out a way to bring it back to the question or relate it to the question.
Okay. Um, is there a secret underground blacklist that recruiters share between each other about bad candidates?
No, I think it depends on like the company because we all have like our candidate, applicant tracking system in a way. So like we'll put in notes of, like this person is a complete nightmare to work with, but like there isn't like a entirety of them. Every recruiter,
Okay. Any recommendation on where to find decent recruiters?
LinkedIn, right here. Just kidding. Um,
Hello, my name is
well,
Mikey.
I think like on a serious note, this kind of goes back to that friend analogy, right? Like if you can build that relationship with somebody and you can understand like they don't see you as just a number, and they actually care about like the type of job that you go to or like the type of client that they're working with. Um, like a recruiter's job is to bridge the gap, right? And if you can suss out like somebody is just talking to you instead of talking with you, like for me that's like huge.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's an interesting distinction. I definitely have been able to tell the difference between like a good recruiter and a bad one with my experience. So like you for example, and like I think I can think of one other recruiter, very personable, very like you remember you're both humans and you're both just trying to do life, whereas a lot of like recruiters are like, okay, yeah, okay, well, next round, um
Yeah,
and that's not as nice, but also like people also are busy, so
exactly. And sometimes too, like depending how big the recruiting agency is, they may have to follow a script, you know? So it's kind of just understanding like for us, we don't necessarily follow a script going into a call. Like I know my outline, but I know also how to pivot. I don't have like some recruiters are like, I have to ask this. And if they answer it this way, then yes. If they answer it this way, then no. Right. So it kind of just depends, but it's based off of the conversations.
okay.
I feel like it's easy to like suss out a genuine person.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's like a kind of like a guard we all put up or don't, and like you can tell like whether you're getting to that person or not. And for some people like it can be a bad thing, I think, for like someone to express their personality, but I don't know, I think it's a pretty good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um can recruiters tell we're lying if we say we've been freelancing in the past years when in reality we haven't?
Yeah, I could tell. Like, I'm like, dude, are you bullshitting me right now? Or like, what? Like, talk to me about some of the projects. Like, what have you been doing? Like, talk to me about the clients that you've had as a freelancer. What did you do? You know, so it's really, I think, dependent on the recruiter too, right? Because like some people are just like, yeah, okay, that sounds great. Because I know when I first started recruiting, I was like, tell me everything I need to hear that's on the job description. But then I would instantly get like slapped in the face when I present them and there's nothing there, right?
Right. Does freelance work experience translate well to the job interview? Do those candidates have any particular strengths or shortcomings if transitioning to traditional work?
Rephrase that again. Sorry, or say that again. I'm looking at chat too. My bad.
Does freelance work experience translate well to the job interview? Do those candidates have any particular strengths or shortcomings if transitioning to traditional work?
I think just depending on the projects that they're working on, like some of the freelancing stuff is like, oh, they're all my own personal projects. You know, like then you're not necessarily working with a team. But if you're freelancing and you're working with other freelancers or other people in that company, then it shows that you're working in a team environment, if that makes sense. So I think it just really depends on the type of work that you're picking up as a freelancer.
Okay. Should we share with the recruiter that essentially like about mental health and like suffering from depression and it affecting work and job hunt history?
It's like I'd say that's a hard question to answer. You know, like the human side of me wants to know about the candidate and like what they're going through. You know, and I think that's a conversation. If somebody were to say that to me, I'd be like, all right, do you think now is a good time to be exploring new opportunities, or do you think it would be better for you to work on your mental health first and get to a spot where you're like ready to rock? So I think that just goes into a very like deep conversation. Again, the human connection of like, I'm here to help you. I'm here to essentially rock with you through this process. But like you have to communicate that with me. And if you don't think that you're ready to go, then like let's explore it at a different time. Right. Um, but again, like I think what I do or how I believe things or how I value things is going to be completely different from a different recruiter. Like another recruiter could hear that and be like, well, we can't work with this person. Right. So
I've definitely mentioned having depression before, and like you can tell when people care because they're like, oh, really? And then I'm like, bruh, I feel like this is just like a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of like judgment about like mental health here that is affecting me negatively. But
Mhm.
I mean, I think everyone should do it the way they're comfortable. For me, I prefer people know about that and then be like, ah, yeah, that's fine, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like, it depends on the culture of the company too, right? Because like for us, in recruiting, sometimes my mental health just goes down the drain, and then I'll have to text my boss and be like, "Yo, I need a day or I need a week off, and I just need to like come back to center." Like if if you're somebody that does suffer from like mental health issues or things, then finding a company that actually supports that instead of a company that's just going to write it off, that's a culture thing, right? Like I was talking to a buddy that he does like suffer from some like depression too, and he wanted a company that would be able to offer like those type of health benefits where he could go to a counselor or to a therapist. Like that was very important to him.
So I guess it kind of just depends on whether you're willing to take the risk or like specifically what you're looking for with the company.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Born asked, there's a popular saying that goes, those who can do, those who can't teach. Would this apply to recruiters as well?
Not necessarily. I think it just depends on the person, honestly. I saw that question and I was like, wait, I was a dancer. I was also a dance teacher. So can I not dance? And I can just teach it, but I think it just kind of depends, honestly. Like all recruiters are different.
Right. I don't know if I fully understand that question. Like, I did just ask it, but like it's saying that, like, maybe recruiters couldn't do other things. Is that what it's saying?
Could potentially. I think it's like up in the air too, right? It's like I know that saying of like those that can't do will just teach, or like those that can't teach will just do. But because I was able to transition from a dancer to a dance teacher, like for me, I'm like it's bridging the gap in a way, right? I think teaching, like that requires a lot more like communication skills in a way because you have to understand like some of the people aren't necessarily grasping onto a concept. But if you're just doing it, then you can just go heads down and you can do whatever you need to do.
Right. I feel like people who like teach art, like you said, often know way, way more about whatever it is. Recruiting is a different skill. Also, teaching is hard. People think they can do it because they've been taught, but it's not as straightforward. Yeah. I think like good teachers, like that's like a big deal. You know, like I had one professor in college who it was physics. I don't even like physics. Amazing teacher, my favorite class in all of college, and it was at 7 a.m. Like that's how you
Oh,
know it was an
7
amazing
a.m.
professor.
classes.
Yeah.
Those are so rough. I had a I had a 3 hour long summer class that started at 7 a.m.
Ooh. Ooh.
They're tough.
All right, we've cycled through all of our questions.
Cool.
Does anyone have any? Oh wait, we got another one. If you have any other questions, put them in the form.
Oh, I would be so rich.
The what Mikey is responding to is if Mikey had $1 for every person that ghosted him, how many dollars would Mikey have?
That doesn't even just go for like, okay, I probably have like $20. But I think too, I look at it as like if I get ghosted, there's so many different scenarios that I can think of. Like, was I a terrible recruiter? Are they just going through something in their life right now? Are they busy? Like, what does that look like? But again, it goes back to, at the beginning of the conversation, we don't want to necessarily assume until we get like that conversation, right? Like for me, whenever I get ghosted, then I understand. It's like, hey, like some candidates will reach out again after ghosting me and be like, hey, my apologies. I was going through this, or this, or like there was a time where, work got super busy. So apologies. And then, we go through it. But I also like kind of start working with them again, but I'm also hesitant, but it's also just having that conversation of like, okay, if I get you submitted for this role, what are we doing? Am I getting ghosted again? But I can also make a joke about it, right? I'm not like a complete ass. It's like, oh, you ghosted me last time, never want to work with you again. Like I like to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Right. If you're running a small business, less than 10 people, what do you need to know about working with recruiters? Is it worthwhile even for finding interns?
I think internships are good. Depending on like the recruiters too, because everyone has like different like I would say placement agreements in a way, right? Like working with a recruiter, like our percentage is going to be different from the other recruiting agency, and just kind of like figuring out what's going to work best for like a small business. Does it make sense right now to bring on a full recruiting agency, or does it make more sense to use the network? If I'm hiring 5 engineers, does it make sense to post a job description on Indeed, or should I just use a recruiter instead? Right? It's like a cost benefit analysis.
We're getting into non-recruiter questions. Have you seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once? If so, did it change your life?
I have not. Should I watch it?
So I watched that 2 weeks ago, and it's a very much like a Sundance movie, kind of like quirky. And if you like quirky movies, yeah, watch it. I don't like quirky movies. I was like, what the fuck? Like, what is happening in this movie? So,
Okay. Okay. I think the last actual movie like I watched that I haven't watched before. Have you watched Barbarian?
no. Should I?
I don't know. It's a scary movie.
Is it
I don't know,
horror?
like scary. Yeah, it was Halloween.
Uh, yeah.
Some jump scares, but yeah, I was like, what is going on in this movie? It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Uh, but then I kept watching it because like I was like not wanting to watch it, but I wanted to watch it.
The this. How do
That
people
was
do that
good.
with their eyes? The peeking. I don't know how to.
I would do that so much as a kid.
Here, how do I? How do I? There,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like that.
Where you can kind of see it, but you can't see a lot of it.
I don't do horror movies, but once I was forced to watch one in a theater. So I read the whole synopsis of the movie, and then I was okay because I knew everything that was going to happen. So,
That's so funny you bring that up because I hate horror movies too, like ghost movies or like paranormal or like devil and stuff. I don't like those movies, but I can watch slasher movies. So like any like paranormal type movies, I'll go on Wikipedia and read what it's about, or I'll just like watch a YouTube video. It's like, like this movie explained in 10 minutes, and I'm like, cool. I basically watched it.
perfect.
Yeah,
That's what I do for all horror movies. I just read the synopsis, but it doesn't quite like do it justice, and I'm also okay with that. So,
that's fair.
um, thank you to the tech recruiters. I get to feel like a Instagram model with constant DMs because of you.
Yes.
Hey, hi. Yeah, I know I'm
Hey,
special.
hey.
Um, okay, wait a second. Honestly, how are recruiters looked at by companies' HR people?
I think it depends. I think when you hear the term recruiter or like headhunter, it has like a negative stigma to it, in a way, just because it's kind of like a car salesman, right? When you hear car salesman, it's very like, don't necessarily want to know if I want to work with that person. But I think for us, like when we're bringing on a new client, like we like to actually go to their space, see what it's like to work there. Like again, it's more so about like the relationship aspect of things, right? But as an agency recruiter, we also understand like we're not top priority to communicate with, so it's just navigating that of like, hey, we have candidates in your pipeline, so we need answers. And sometimes you have like those hard conversations, but I think a lot of those hard conversations really help build that relationship between, say, a client, like a third party and an agency recruiter.
Okay. We have like 3 more questions as of right now, but I know it's an hour and that's kind of when you wanted to leave. Do you have time for more questions or should we wrap it up?
Let's do it. That's 3 questions.
Okay. This is an interesting one to be one of the 3. If someone named Matt messaged you on LinkedIn who is super personal but now regrets his terrible dry message, could you ever forgive them?
No, never. Blocked.
Goodbye, someone named Matt.
Yeah. Peace out, Matt. Never working with you. Oh, that's so funny because like I've reached out to people and I've accidentally like misspelled their name or like said a different name because I was like looking at something else while I was typing. Like, we're all human. We all make mistakes. You know, it's like if that person can laugh about it, I'm also gonna laugh about it. So Matt, delete your connection request. Send it to me in 6 weeks when you're allowed to again, and fix your message.
Is there really like a
Don't
buffer
delete
like
your
that?
connection message. Yeah, for me there is. If I delete a connection request, like you can't. I don't think you can send another one for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks or something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Are green screens frowned upon during remote video interviews?
Typically, I like a good blur. Like if you're green screening yourself, like on the beach during an interview, it depends. Like what are you green screening?
Yeah, I remote work. I'm in Playa del Carmen. Just
Yeah, I'm in Ibiza right now.
oh my goodness. Um, then is it good to form relationships with recruiters while employed and not necessarily looking for a new job?
Yeah, I mean it's just like another friend, right? Um, it's like especially right now with the market and how crazy things are getting, you never know what's going to happen, right? So just always just kind of not essentially like keeping a pulse on things, but just like hey, like I recently got laid off, or hey, recently I'm not liking what I'm doing. Like, is there anything? It's always about those relationships, and for me, it's like sometimes I talk to people where I'm like, I don't have a role for you, but in 3 months it could potentially pop up. Timing is everything.
Right. Timing is everything. All right. Well, I mean, there's one more question that popped up, but we said 3, so that was 3.
I read the question. I'll
Okay.
answer it.
What if your recruiter's a 10 but doesn't give you the job?
If your recruiter's a 10 but doesn't get you the job, it happens. The rejection happens. And if your recruiter is truly a 10, they're going to stay in contact with you. Like I've had candidates that have gone through multiple interviewed with companies, and like they understand that it's not my job to hire them. It's more so of like I act as a professional matchmaker, right? If I think that based off of what the client is saying and based off of what I know of the candidate, there could potentially be a fit there. If not, then like let's keep trucking. So I do my best. So
All the dating parallels. Wow.
it's weird. It's so weird.
Matchmaking, asking similar questions. All right. Well, thank you, Mikey. Thank you so much for coming here
Thank
and
you.
answering questions. We always love hanging out with you.
I love it. I love hanging out and just chatting.
Yeah, we had a lot of
It's my
good
favorite.
questions.
Those
And
are like hard.
yeah.
Remember when I was like, hey, let's keep it like low key today? You guys really just like made me pull my brain out.
Yeah, no, before we went live, Mikey was like, "Yeah, I'm fine as long as we don't do any hard questions." And then all of them were hard, so.
Yeah. The Matt question. I swear that's the hardest one.
The math question.
Matt got me.
Someone named Matt. Not just Matt. Someone.
Matt, if you're out there, I will accept your connection message.
Speaking of that, are people here like are they allowed to hit you up on LinkedIn?
Yeah, feel free. Again, with Route, we work more on senior developer positions, but you never know what will come across my desk, or if you ever need help or have questions about like going into an interview, how to answer things. Like more than happy to always be a resource. I might not be able to get you a place right now, but it's all about the relationship. So it might take a couple days, just because I also have to work,
So
but
popular.
I'll do what I can to help out.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here, and hopefully we can have you on again. Just saying.
Absolutely, absolutely,
All right.
awesome.
Have a good rest of your day,
Thank
and
you too.
yeah, yep.
Bye, everybody. Peace
Bye.
out.
Peace. Peace. Now I have to figure out how to
Do I
do
just
that.
hit leave guest star
I think you do.
and then I'm gone forever?
Forever. You don't exist anymore because you're an AI. Sorry.
Okay, bye.